welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's another episode of the Nonprofits. Thank you so much, everyone, all of you, for joining us on this Sunday show. So let's get started. In here, the Nonprofits is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. I am so happy that we finally have our Outcast X, he's been on our show previously before. So welcome back, sir. How are you?
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Good. Anything recent news? What have you been up to? I know the last time you were on, great hit. Love that episode. I know you were on it with Neil over there. So I
Yep.
enjoyed that show. So since then, what's been going on?
Let's see. My main channel that we have out there for Utah Outcast just recently got demonetized by YouTube thanks to some people mass flagging us, and I'm assuming they're going to be of the religious type. And so that's been some fun that I've been trying to deal with. Meanwhile, the Outcast X channel is doing quite all right, and I got my vaccine today, so I'm super happy. I'm so
Yes,
happy that it's nearly there.
one
I
of
can
us.
almost enjoy being around people again.
Apparently, one more and you get no more masks wearing.
Yeah, I don't think I
Yeah,
agree
that's
with
what your
that
CDC
100%.
I
said.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is the correct answer. Thank you for saying that. Moving,
I think I'm
moving
still going to
on.
wear
Yeah.
them no matter what because facial recognition IDs.
Mm,
The
The
people are
yeah,
gonna
government,
get you. The
they're going to get
government.
me.
Me
that's
They
too,
already
because
crazy.
got me.
someone told me I
Anyways,
look like
guys,
Shredder. So
Sorry.
just
hey,
kidding.
that's my line.
Sorry. Just to borrow a phrase from a friend. Cynthia, I
Hey.
finally, so good to have you on with me. We're doing this
Yay!
together. I know I've been trying to pull teeth trying to get you in, girl. But anyway, how are you, Cynthia?
I am well, thank you very much so, Jenna. I am so happy to be in the chair next to you virtually.
Yes.
And
No.
then also virtually in between with Neil the Progressive Bandana.
Oh yeah. That's a new name. We'll edit
That's
his name
yes, we're
later
gonna
on.
edit your name. Yes. There's a reason for that, people.
Yes. If you
Just know.
recall last Sunday's show, our good old Johnny P. Angel has his trusty old conservative hat. So
Mhm.
now we have deemed our very own Neil as our Neo Progressive Bandana.
Yes.
So, we cater to both sides here.
I didn't get the email.
It's
It
Sounds
was
like a
in the
Muppet
chat.
character.
it was
It
in the
was in the
chat.
chat, Neil.
You agreed with it
You did.
late one night.
You sure
Well,
did.
Did I?
thank you for those intros. But anyway, focus on you, our YouTube viewers. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. Click that little like button down below. Click those subscribe buttons so you are always updated when we have our premiered shows every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central. If you can, please be sure to support us at Patreon, which is our patreon.com/the nonprofits. Feel free to join us in our fan social media networks or outlets. We have a fan server Discord called the Atheist Community of Discord. So you can, go and join that Discord by typing in tiny.cc/ACA Discord. And you can follow us and have a conversation with us on facebook.com/group/nonprofits live. And of course, with everything that we discussed today, all links and descriptions are available below this channel. So if you feel that you want to contribute to the discussion that we have today, if you have anything additional to add, let us know. Send us an email, nonprofits@atheist-community.org. So, without further ado, it is March. Happy Women's History Month, by the way. Had to get that out there. And we're gonna, at the end of the show, kind of recognize each of us have a little recognition of particular women we want to voice as part of being major contributors to the history of not just America, but the world. And speaking of
Mhm.
which, in regards to, reflecting on more international news, because I'm sure, not everyone lives in America, not everyone lives in Texas. So let's try to focus a little bit more on what's going on outside of those realms. And this first article that we have here kind of dives into that. X, I'm wondering if you can kind of summarize what it pretty much what
So
we're referencing are. Yeah.
basically, this article that we have from The Guardian talks about a Chinese divorce court has ordered a man to pay his wife the equivalent of about $7,700 American as compensation for housework during the 5-year marriage when the lady was married to the guy. During that time, she had a child, and he was the sole breadwinner, and she was the person that kept the house clean. He honestly didn't offer very much help when it came to doing stuff around the house or child rearing. But under a new civil code that came into effect last month, a person may seek compensation from their partner during a divorce if they were the primary carer for children or elderly parents in China, or if they did most of the unpaid housework. The amount should be negotiated, but if that fails, then it will be decided by the court. And in Beijing, the court ruled that the husband, surnamed Chen, must pay his now ex-wife Wang the sum of 50,000 yuan for not pulling his weight around the house. So I'm actually a big fan of this. This is
Me
something.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not something that I'm sure none of us are strangers to, and even with our audience are strangers to. This has been, I think, a consistent discussion for many, many years as far as payment towards homemakers and if that should be compensated and how can that be compensated. And now just recently, just a small overview of this new China civil code that they put in effect as early as this year. It's pretty much a collection of laws related to civil affairs, such as marriage, property ownership, personal rights, and inheritance. So it was aimed to quote unquote better protect individuals' personal information and property and making it easier to sue for divorce or sexual harassment, which, in relation to this first type of court case. And the verdict that was drawn from it, I believe, with this couple, they were married for 5 years.
5 years.
And
Mhm.
yes,
Yep.
5 years. And then just recently decided to divorce. And just the whole sum of that 5-year marriage as that wife being a homemaker, all she get, my language,
It's all
all
good.
she inherited from that, marriage was a slightly over $7,000. That's
Mhm.
it.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I don't necessarily even think that the article actually highlighted if she was entitled to any other compensation
Right, it didn't.
or any
She
due
she is getting
outside of.
additional per month stipend as well.
Okay.
So she's still going to be getting paid a what would you call that here? Alimony here in the United
Right.
States. So
Hmm.
Alimony
Yeah.
and or
child
what is the
support.
child
Yeah.
support? Yeah. Okay. I thought that this was like a pretty interesting article, and as just opposed to talking about what is the worth of domestic work. I can recall that my grandmother was a domestic worker when she came to the United States, and she did not. She only came home to be with our family on the weekends, and she stayed 5 days a week in a suburb of Chicago called Kenilworth. And if anyone knows anything about Kenilworth, Kenilworth is one of the richest suburbs that is around over
I
here.
say,
Okay,
Buffy.
I say, oh, please pass me some champagne, champagne.
Oh.
So, but it was never. As far as like what she was making as to compensate her existence. I mean, like, she wasn't going to be able to even afford to live on her own or to do any of those other things without like family support, because a domestic worker just didn't get paid like that.
Yeah.
And especially since, like, my grandma at the time was not married, so it was kind of just like had to rely on whatever she brought in and whatever the kindness of the family gave to her. And but I just was just thinking about some of the questions like that rose to me, like how do you really compensate a person when it comes to taking like a traditional role of a homemaker. And I also was wondering to myself how this particular story would set precedent for other cases in different countries when it comes to people not necessarily being married any longer or in a civil union. And I also even wonder, would She had been compensated if she was the one who sought the divorce rather than the husband, because I believe
Mm,
that article did highlight that. I believe his name was Wang. The husband's name was Wang, I believe.
right. Hmm.
I thought,
And he was like, "Yeah, I don't want to marry you no more. I don't want to be married to you no more. So I'm out. Peace." And so that's what kind of like, did the whole train ride to, Divorce City. So
Yep.
I just wonder, these particular things, like how does this spur a conversation beyond that?
Yeah.
Hmm. Go ahead, Neil. Yes.
I think if it could be done, you could take. There are, we'll call them businesses out there, like Molly Maid, which is
Hmm.
a cleaning service.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There are daycares for kids.
Mhm.
If you kind of sort of do a figuring of what kind of money these companies make, you could work out some sort of a quote unquote salary for a domestic
Mhm.
engineer, or we'll call them, I guess, or homemaker or
Sure.
whatever.
Mhm.
Right? You
Certainly.
could figure out some kind of a salary base based on what the normal charges are for those types of businesses that are out there, and you could probably work from there, and then somehow possibly implement it in taxation somehow, so everyone sort of chips in, and you know
Yeah.
and then stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads or whatever the situation is gets paid.
Mhm.
No, that's a fair point. And, um, definitely can look at those statistics and what would be the business kind of cap or salary for those individual like daycares and things like that, maid services. I'm curious as to where that money would come from because I know state
Mm.
by state in the U.S., different laws abide by different
Yeah.
things.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Could this be done federally? Could this be done statewide? I found something quite interesting within some type of extra research that I did that someone proposed that the compensation to the wife or husband or whomever would be compensated from their spouse directly. So
Mhm.
that would realistically mean that that said spouse would have to also be an active worker outside the home. But what if
Hmm.
that wasn't the situation? What if they both
Right.
were home
Right.
maker? What if that individual
You
was
still
not
have a
married?
single income
See,
household
and
though.
Right.
Right.
specifically in this case, you had the sole breadwinner, which was the husband,
Mhm.
but he also didn't chip in or help when it came to child rearing or doing any of the chores around the house. And I know for a good chunk of America, that's not the case anymore. I mean, I have
Yeah.
a Gallup poll from 2019 that still shows that women mainly still do the laundry, the cleaning the house, and preparing meals and caring for children on a daily basis, like by at least 50%,
Mhm.
over what men do. And the thing is that that's not the staple anymore. Like I could say just with my own household that I do all the cooking around here because I've always liked to cook. I do all the vacuuming. I still do the lawn care stuff, which is traditionally viewed as gendered work, but it's
Mhm.
not. And she does the
No.
landscaping. It's really strange that like there's some people out there that are still very hard lined into thinking that everybody has their role when it
Right.
comes based on to like what gender you are.
Right.
And to me, it's just one of those things where it's been a wash for a long time for me. So it's interesting that there are still people like this guy in the story that he wasn't willing to help with any of that. And I'm like, that's still a
Yeah.
thing people do. And unfortunately, I must live in some sort of Oz because those guys are still out there, I guess. So
Yeah. Taking into account, like, obviously, this is from, culturally different country, different demographic,
Sure.
different. It's different from wherever you live. So how that particular country, how that culture handles this type of situation, and how they culturally handle, gender norms or societal norms within, where they live, it will vary. And
Mhm.
so I can't think of just thinking of in regards to where I live, I can't think of how compensation for any domestic worker, how that would happen. and especially if
Got to
it's
be a way.
from right, especially if it's from directly from the spouse. So in a sense, you're sharing a pooled monies, you're sharing pooled income. It doesn't truly feel like yours, I feel
Hmm.
like.
What if even like kind of circling on this whole thing about the pooled money, and especially like when you are trying to figure out like how this would look on a macro level. um I would think that even a conversation, or a conversation should be had between spouses on what work or what role are you going to assume in the relationship. um and I know that traditionally, these home, like cooking and cleaning and taking care of children, is considered a woman's role. However, we can see that those roles are starting to um,
Flex. Yeah.
yeah,
Indeed.
but it does vary. Where those roles are flexing, as you mentioned, Jenna. However, to your point, X, we still see a very high rate of women that actually still assume these particular roles. And
Mhm.
I suppose that I'm thinking to myself, like, if something like that as a law would come into play in America, as in not only do you have to support your spouse if you all split, for whatever reason, and the children, you still got to pay them for the work that they did if you were the sole person, and that is the role that they actually, acquiesce to. And if that is the case, I wonder if that would change the dynamic as far as what spouse does what inside the home. Like, oh, I'm not paying you, so I'm going to help with this cooking and child rearing, and you about to come out here and cut this grass too. How about that?
I
Absolutely. Yeah.
I got a nice auto push lawnmower. All you got to do is just hold the handle and it just walks you.
Nice.
There you go.
But then
I
again,
think
Cynthia, that would require people actually, I don't know, that we have a problem in this country with people communicating in their marriages.
Ooh, talk about it.
Yeah.
That to me, that just seems like, how like a lot of times that when people are like going to divorce court, and if you ever watch any of those shows, they're hilarious. But a lot of them are citing irreconcilable differences,
mhm, mhm.
but oftentimes it's because folk don't want to talk to each other. And I'm just like, my whole thing, and I've told this to my partner on several occasions. I'm like, look, the moment that we stop talking is the moment we don't need to be together, because like I believe that relationships are built on communication.
Yep.
Like, how am I going to know what's going on with you, or even how to help you or assist you in any kind of way if you don't talk to me?
Mhm.
And it's the same way, in towards my partner. Like, I'm going to tell you what's on my mind. I'm not about to walk around just playing like, silent Samantha on you. If you are upset, like, no, if I'm upset, I'm going to tell you I'm upset and this is the reason why. But I think
Mhm.
that it should be done in a way where we can, if we're consenting adults, that we should be able to communicate with one another in a civil discourse and be able to put, our proverbial cards on the table, and
Sure.
and go from there. But that's just too much, like, right.
I wonder. I wonder if the person in the family that is employed. Wonder if there is a way that this is. I'm probably way off base here, but the companies that hire people, you could have clauses, right? You need to pay me enough so that I can give a little extra to compensate my partner at home who's taking care of all the stuff at home,
Sure.
Sure.
and maybe even then the government subsidy could come in to pick up the other half of that. So
This
that
almost
at
sounds
least
like our healthcare system in America, where we have health savings accounts, where you need to have a savings account
something.
pre-tax to pay your wife or your spouse.
Not
I
for
like
that.
that. What is it called? I know it's like the FSA or the HSA. That would be the
Yes.
the flexible spending spouse account,
You just have to
pre-tax.
You have to have that
Pointed.
separate bank account for ransom money, you know.
Ah,
I went out of this marriage. Here's $10,000. Let me go.
Separation fee.
oh my
Oh, yes.
goodness. Wow, wow,
How about we
wow.
make it harder for people to marry? How about we could do that one too, or and have kids? How about that? But
Yeah, like there has to just how like how you have to purchase a home, you got to put it down on it. Okay, you got to put $5,000 down. So anything happens,
Ain't
if you
nobody
want out,
getting
I get
married.
your five and I keep
Right.
mine.
Ain't nobody getting married if you
Nobody cares.
do.
That's
Down
hilarious.
payment. What they say?
That's
Put a
what they
ring
said
on
when
it.
they brought in
Oh, oh,
prenups.
oh.
So no one's going to get married now. People are still doing it.
Right.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
to bring it all back, before we get too crazy.
yeah.
I but
4?
mm, a little. But Cynthia, you brought up an interesting point. Whereas you know, you definitely, of course, depending on the culture, depending on even religious background, um, not I will go ahead and just defer to women because this is we're the most marginalized between the men and women are the most marginalized when it comes to domestic work like this. A lot of women, especially coming off of certain religious backgrounds, don't have that freedom to speak up and demand, the need to, support themselves.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, even in situations where both are working, I
Mhm.
know of a particular situation of a patient that, all of her monies that she earned automatically went to the husband, and he delineated what was spent and how much was he controlled and what was
Hmm.
saved, and anything that was purchased, it was through whatever was blindly sent to his bank account. There's nothing that she saw. And some women will outright say, "Oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to see it. I have my husband look at it." And so thinking on if there's any type of law that can be, started here in America and Canada, anywhere else where there are dramatic cultural religious differences, you kind of sort of impede on those cultural and religious differences if you enact such a federal mandate on it. I'm sure there could be some, rules to kind of make exceptions, but the protection is there. I don't know. The workaround is just kind of hard. And still, where would that money come from? How would these domestic workers be paid?
Mm.
Mm.
So,
UBI.
Well, here's the thing. You get rid of the fact that we have to pay for health. You get rid of individually paid
mm,
for health plans with the companies and with us, and you
hmm
save that extra money from the single payer system and make that something that goes into UBI for everybody.
Oh, there you
Well, X just solved the world.
well, there you go.
I don't
Okay.
know, guys. I'd rather pay a little bit more in taxes if I knew I was going to get insurance because I'm not spending $300 a paycheck to have my health insurance.
Facts. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind putting a little bit
go.
from my paycheck for policies like that.
Neil, shut up.
Especially if it's
Oh,
going to be
sorry.
you're right. Yeah.
You heard
Hush.
what was thoughts that were going on in there, didn't you?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And we're
It's
telling
good to be
you,
Canadian.
hush. Yeah. Hush
Hmm
you and your progressive bandana, sir.
Yeah.
You and your charter of rights.
And I want to
And
post
freedoms.
another, yeah, and I want to post another thing also, stemming from what Cynthia said earlier, as far as yes, if the person that is requesting the divorce, how is that person requesting that divorce protected, and vice versa?
Mhm.
Like, does it, obviously based on this story, just recently happened over just last month, this case, and the first of its kind since they enacted the civil code. Obviously, the husband's not getting anything. The woman is getting $7,000 plus dollars on top of what type of monthly alimony she's getting. So, but on his end, and I'm not trying to take sides here, on his end, what is his, protection out of all
Mm.
that?
That's a good question. And
Hmm
and I think that that's something that should also be discussed, especially when it comes to any of these laws, when it comes to, civil unions and or marriages. Like, there should be protections that are built in for both spouses, when it comes to whatever role that they happen to assume in the actual relationship. And because like I can totally see a pushback from the husband that says, "Why I have to pay all this money for something that you do anyway?" As far as like and I worked. I brought it. I paid the bills. I did that, this, and the third. That's what you're supposed to do, right? So and there will be people that agree with him, right?
Right.
In the whole crux of the thing, I think that it still mm, deserves more of a discussion, and really seeing like what looks like fairness on both sides.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
further in the article, this is going to be my last line on this thing. 427,000 people responded to the online poll on the Chinese media outlet Phoenix Weekly, and which asked if the compensation was right, too small, too big, Goldilocks questions. 94% said it was right, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that.
And most commenters saying that everybody underestimates the job of a stay-at-home wife and mother. And some people were jokingly giving the popular idiom in China to keep yourself, don't get married or give birth. And so they're trying to say, you know what you got into.
Well, like my mom always used to say, if they paid her for what she did when she was a stay-at-home mom, she'd be making more than my dad.
Right.
There you go. I mean, there's certainly some worth behind, domestic worth. Definitely. How
Indeed.
we
Oh yeah.
place a value on that and
And it's
how,
so important. God, it's so important.
yes, definitely. And how we place that value and how that should be compensated for those domestic workers is a continuing conversation. And,
Mhm.
I based on that, yeah, I agree with that poll. It was the right thing to do, but it was much too
Mhm.
small. And
Mhm.
there was no indication of what that monthly alimony, but I digress. I want to move forward on this because I know we can talk a little bit extraneously on this one, but I want to
Yeah,
move to New
Like
Zealand.
everything.
I
Want to
do
move to
too.
New Zealand?
Yeah,
Hmm.
I want to,
Interesting.
or at least within the next kind of piece that we're talking about here, and this is vitally, vitally important. And it's
Yeah.
it's non-surprising to me, but also surprising because, well, anyway, I digress because with this, just recently, in New Zealand, or upcoming, I should say, in New Zealand, their prime minister is enacting a law, a mandate for all schools, primary schools, high schools or their equivalent of high schools and up, to offer
College
free
level.
college level, yes, thank you,
Yeah.
to offer students, or provide students with free sanitary products for students. So sanitary products obviously automatically assumes, um, period protection, sanitary tissues like pads, Tampax, things like that. Um, I, just kind of to a little bit of a tangent, and this was weird to see when I was younger, when I was in high school, not even high school, and junior high, around 13, 14. I would see in the girls bathroom these little dispensers that you actually had to put a coin in to get the sanitary product out. I never used it, and the one time I did, it broke, and I was like, well, fuck, you took my quarter. But anyway,
I want my money
um
back.
I I had
When's
to,
the last time they rotated that product?
yeah, exactly. But, to pay, you're actively a kid, a, a a a kid that has no means of money, but what your parents can kind of give you, to put in money to get something that you need for personal hygiene and care.
Right.
It kind of, just sitting and thinking about it, when I found this article, I was just like, I almost was flabbergasted because there's just such lack of support and major disparities when it comes to having and providing this means of protection for personal hygiene. And good on the prime minister. And prior to New Zealand actively starting this, and they're going to start this in their school term this year in July. Last year, November, Scotland became one of the first countries to establish free sanitary products to all their schools.
Hmm.
And so, the prime minister for New Zealand had attributed the cost of this whole rollout of about $18 million from now until 2024. $18 million to do this. And compared to the spending in America on the billions and trillions of dollars we spend on military and various other things, that's almost a drop in a bucket. To me, it feels like it's just almost a drop in a bucket. And, well, there you have it. I just want your takes on that.
Well, first off, good on the Prime Minister of New Zealand for doing this. I mean,
Mhm.
like sanitary napkins, they can be expensive, and like for any person who has like issues concerning, lack of access to, money, and live very poorly, oftentimes actually being able to purchase sanitary napkins can look like a luxury, you know,
And that's
and
messed up. That's so
it
messed
it
up.
it is. It
Yeah.
totally is totally messed up, and I'm just thinking like, if you have like, young girls that's going to school, and especially if they're coming from, and if this is like in a public school setting, of course, like, the diversity of what they have is like income household is going to look differently, right? And even though like and another thing that I was even thinking when I was reading this is that, you know I was a stupid child, and I didn't always really understand the whole carry your stuff with you to school just in
Oh,
case. That's
yeah.
something I had to learn the hard way. And to be honest, like when that happened to me, I was really upset. You all need to talk to my mother about that story, but I digress. Uh, like,
Bring her
no,
on the show.
Was it
Bring her
like
on the show.
Carrie?
my God, why that really happened?
Like
Yeah.
Carrie. No, 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 no.
Oh gosh.
Child, but
I yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Nick.
was actually I actually found like a another article that was in response to the Canadian government that planned on making menstrual products actually free for federal workers, and
Mhm.
it talked about like, 3 reasons why period products should be free and available in public restrooms. So like this would be something that can be given, to all people within that area. Like one, it's stressful and distracting to get caught without them. Hello. I mean, I don't know how many times that we have heard. I know that I've heard and experienced like horror stories, like,
Mhm.
being in classroom and then all of a sudden that happens and you have nothing on you, and it's a
Yep.
mess. Literally it's a mess. And
It happened
then,
to a girl in my home ec class, and she was wearing white jeans.
oh my
Oh.
gosh, that's horrible.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Secondly, they said menstrual products are, as I mentioned previously, are very expensive. I mean, just even think
Mhm.
about how New Zealand is providing $18 million over the next I believe you said 2024. So that's,
Yeah, 3
yeah,
years.
3 years,
Mhm.
just to supply these products. That means that they're not like just a drop in the hat, right? And another thing that I found was very interesting when it actually talked about how it saves on waste. And I took this quote from the Huff Post, and it said an estimate from us stated that women spent over $2,000 in their lifetime on replacing underwear
Mm.
that has been ruined by leaks.
Yep.
And if you have this problem, you know that you have a special selection of undies just for that occasion. But if we're even going to save the world for climate change, this is, their continuance of their of why they stated this. If you're going to save the world from climate change, we've really got to think about where our used undies go. And did you know that 20% of industrial water pollution is estimated to come from garment manufacturing, while the
Mhm.
global apparel and footwear industries account for 8% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions?
Whoa. So you can
I
cut
didn't.
down on a lot there.
Yeah, you can. So, yeah, let's go ahead and make this stuff free everywhere.
Has anybody ever wondered why they don't put just tire rubber at the bottom of your shoes? That I mean, those are good for like 80,000 miles. Why don't they use that kind of tread? I don't know.
Pretty sure that's what they did with mine.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I thought you was going to say something really problematic, like why don't
No.
you use
No,
tire
no.
tread? I was about
No,
to go there.
no.
Tire
See,
tread.
a lot. I don't make it known a lot of the time, but I'm a father of 3 daughters, and only one of them is menstrual age, and it's embarrassing for her. And it's happened to her at least once where she didn't have what she needed with her, and so it's got. And I feel I have to empathize really hardly because I was just a stupid teenager. I didn't pay one lick of any kind of thought to what the ladies around me were experiencing, and they had been experiencing it for years in like high school. And here I am, just like I'm gonna go buy some pizza and a soda over here, just throwing money at like just what I would consider luxury at the time. Meanwhile, there's people that are coming to school and they can't even have the stuff that they need to have proper sanitation, or to at least not ruin their clothing and stuff, and just. Guys, we need to do better. We need to think about the other half of our population.
Mhm.
Be a little considerate, even if it's just the simple fact that they want you to go to the store and pick up a product for them. Don't be that guy. Don't. Come on, you can do better than that.
Indeed,
Be better,
indeed.
yeah.
Shout out to my dad. May he rest. That he was very good at doing that for me because like I remember like on occasions like I run out or like it happened or what have you, and I'm like, Dad, could you please go to the store? And he's like, say no more, and he would go get what I needed, including cramp medication because that was important too, just to make sure that I was okay. So I'm glad that I had that particular example as far as like my dad actually doing that for me. But I've
Really?
heard, yeah, dad would go, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And I used to get. I remember I was first like because like my parents divorced when I was younger, but I would go stay with my dad, and when that happened, I was afraid that he wouldn't do it. Because like my dad was very much so, you know, ladies do this, gentlemen do that, and then
Same.
Never shall the twain meet, right?
yes, thank you. but, but but he kind of just figured, like, well, I'm the parent that is here, and this is what my daughter needs, so
It's
I'm
my
gonna go ahead
job.
and take care of it. It's my job,
Kind of
and
work.
I wish that more daddies and even partners like would think like that, like
Absolutely.
help your
Yes.
people out, help
And
your
I,
people out.
I I have gone to the almost embarrassing extreme of it though, like at Costco, and I'm like, what size do you need to get on across?
Just to be funny.
Baby, do you need the overnights or what?
Well, I mean, if I'm
Extra.
I'm gonna buy them in bulk, if I'm gonna buy them,
That's
Neil,
three
did you
daughters,
have?
3 daughters, guys,
Oh gosh. Yeah, you would.
Oh
Neil,
yeah,
you
yeah,
have a
yeah.
point.
Yeah, you do. Get them
and my
points
wife.
up.
Sorry,
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, you can use all them points. Costco got points, don't they? Don't you get points on
yeah,
on
yeah,
buying things?
I believe
I
so.
believe so.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
love going to Costco.
Neil, you had something?
Yeah, I want to know. Like, I'm all for this. By the way, I think it should be free for anyone that needs them, like at work or college, school, whatever. But how do they distribute it so that because there's going to be people, if it's in a machine or something, that there's going to be people that go in there and hijack the entire amount that's in that machine, and then
Just
nobody else gets it.
keep it in the school nurse's office or something like that.
That's
Just
Right.
yeah. I was going to say you'd have to have some sort of a system where
just
that
like you
couldn't
should
be
also
done.
have the punch bowl full of condoms for high school kids. You know,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I mentioned that I think in my notes too. I
Right in
think
the
it's
front.
the same
Yes, you
thing with that.
did.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
in the front. Yeah, matter of fact, that's kind of how we do it at the clinic that I work for. I mean, we got a punch bowl, fish bowl, yo bowl right in the front, full of condoms so that you can get your prophylactics and be safe while you're doing the Boom, chicka, wow, wow. Oh, I'm sorry. This is not
Well,
Thursday. This is
no,
not
Hey,
Thursday. Sorry.
we
hey.
just need more people to quit feeling oogie about natural stuff. That's what we
Yeah,
need.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Indeed,
Exactly.
I
And
agree.
We're
and that's
getting
what
there.
exactly. And that's where I recognize the trouble because this is not just a s- the this is a stigma not just for the poor minority groups. It's a stigma for everyone.
Everyone.
It is.
Everyone that has an inability at one point or another that could not afford to get that sanitary product that they needed. I have definitely been a sufferer of that at one point or another in my life. And based on what I have read and just my own personal knowledge that or my own personal experience, I should say, that when I was lacking that need for personal hygiene, I had to use toilet paper.
Yep.
And that is not safe. That's
Nope,
not
that's not
safe.
good. No bueno.
And if you lack the funds to purchase these type of products for yourself, and if you lack the means to just have the immediate access to it, then you lose out. You develop that shame and the stress, and they prioritize this focus on schools because they recognize that a lot of students would miss out on classes because of the shame of not
Yeah.
having what they needed, or they've been embarrassed and they missed out
Hmm.
on class. And this
Hmm.
is just another step forward to ensure that students won't be skipping school because of this basic need. It's a
Right.
basic
Mhm.
need that's it. It's just a
It's a
basic need.
basic need. Yeah.
Yes. And then, and it's so interesting because New Zealand ran the case study of this type of project that they're going to fully implement in June last year around this time. And so, based on the feedback from students and teachers and faculty and things like that, they realized that not only was this the most helpful and saw a slight change as far as attendance and, the presence of students being in the classroom, but students actively seeking to be more knowledgeable about the purpose of cleanliness, educating themselves on proper sexual hygiene, proper personal hygiene, whether you were male, female, or other. Just knowing, having that knowledge, knowing where you can go, knowing who to talk to, that's vital. Because it's a damn shame if you don't have a parent that you can immediately go to, let
Hmm.
alone anyone that you can trust and depend on outside of the home that you can say, I need help.
Yeah,
Right.
Jacinda
That's all.
Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she's not playing games. She left Mormonism a handful of years ago, probably I think probably like 10 years ago, and she's deciding to break down every wall of what they put up around her when she was growing up.
Very good.
The
Yeah.
LDS Church has a lot of ladies feeling a lot of internalized misogyny, and
Oh, I bet.
it really is too bad. Like my state legislature, we were trying to get the taxes removed from feminine hygiene products because they're already
Tampon
removed
tax.
from so many other products.
Mhm.
But meanwhile, the ladies have to pay the tampon tax, and it's messed up. And it came up in the state legislature, I think, a couple of years ago, and my representative from my district who ran unopposed, which I need to fix that. She uh, she was the one dissenting vote that got a couple of other people to turn around and making it so everybody has to pay the same amount because we need that tax money is what they came up and said.
Oh, like they can't get it from anything else.
Well,
Yeah.
you're
Well,
talking about the same loving legislature that put the food taxes back on to the unprepared foods because we had a
Good.
governor for a little while that took it away
Hmm.
because he's like, it's not fair. This is for people that aren't buying completed food products and they're just like buying rice, beans, the stuff that you would get, and they had a lower tax on that opposed to like the 6% that we have in the state.
Hmm.
And they're just saying, hey, how about we get rid of taxes on these? And they're like, no, we need all that money. So
For
people,
what? Well, I mean, like, I understand, like, it's important, in order for you to have like money to run your, your state budgets and things
yeah.
of that
But
nature.
you're not going to be making it off the backs of ladies needing tampons.
No, you're
no.
not. No, you're not. And that's for damn sure. And I would hate that, like, a tax is going to be mostly on like women for something that they really need in order for, like, the state to grift off of it.
Yep.
And that's and I personally feel that, like, taxes on like products that are like necessary for people to have, like
Absolutely.
like food
Food.
staples, like right, like food staples.
Yeah.
Eliminate that tax for what? I mean, and
It should be exempted.
it really should.
Yep.
There's so many things we should do. Everybody, let's just run for everything.
One for everything, everybody.
Mhm. Everybody.
I
Like,
mean,
I
Well,
worked
they
with
got
your husband. I know the skeletons in your closet, lady.
go ahead, Neil. I'm sorry.
Sorry, man.
that's okay. No, I was just gonna say that they gotta tax everything because they need that Ted Cruz go to Mexico money.
Let's take it.
No, here in this state, it's called the rainy day fund that we have. We have a huge amount of money saved up for just in case something catastrophic happens. And what happens? COVID hit. Did they use it? Nope.
I'm gonna say no.
Wow.
That
So-
was too much like right, X.
They went and
It's,
bought toilet paper, right?
No, it's just like, no, they bought actually like $1 million plus worth of hydroxychloroquine without going through the legislature.
Oh, we talked about that a few
Yeah.
weeks ago. We
Yeah.
did,
Yep.
I forgot the representative, or was it the representative or the attorney general that authorized that
You guys
the
need help down there.
It was a representative that went through with it, but he didn't actually have to go through any committees to make that purchase. Like they
Mhm.
gave them executive power to make that choice, and it's just like, wait a minute, hold
Right.
on a damn minute. You're going to be spending all of our money, and you're not going to have receipts for it. What the hell's going on?
And I believe that was like authorized after hydrochloroquine was deemed
After
that it was,
proven-
that was proved that it was not going to be effective against the treatment of COVID-19.
Right.
Yeah, this
So
is
if you got
why,
lupus, come to Utah. We got a lot of supply of hydroxychloroquine.
right?
As soon
I'm-
as I
I'm
heard
wondering-
that shit, I went and looked
Uh-huh.
that up because that's what I do. I'm a chemist, right? So I went and looked all that up, and I'm like, no, it's not going to
Yeah.
do nothing.
Exactly.
The
And knowing,
panacea for everything.
I don't know all there is about every medication, but I know enough to be like that doesn't work. That does not work. And I'm wondering it's just a lack of education just on a broad spectrum
Yes.
for everyone. Lack of education and knowing what I mean, it's hard to say it's just basic common sense, but that no longer really exists for me.
I'll tell you what, it's the people
It's not common
that think
anymore.
they've read one article on the internet and now they're an expert on
And
something.
they're an expert. Yeah.
And now, right, and it's usually
Right.
Wikipedia.
Well, they need
Well,
to be an expert on this because this is something that's vitally important. And I'm, all power to you to Scotland that did it first, New Zealand that's coming right after, Canada. Sounds like you guys are hitting it up.
Yep.
It's who
Hush,
knows when,
Neil, hush.
how we regulate our laws state by state is you never know. You never know. But it's that lack of understanding the stigma and the education behind it and the need forward that could prevent certain diseases, unwanted pregnancies, anything that could help contribute to just, fulfilling that basic needs. And speaking of unwanted pregnancies, that leads us to our next segment.
I was an accident.
bit-
Oh, never mind.
Ooh, segue.
Segue.
I wasn't trying to get personal, Neil, but okay.
Listen,
True.
Neil was born from a lotus. He was
Uh-huh.
he came from the blossom of a lotus. There you go.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
And then
all
Mothra
that
showed
encompassing, that does lead us to our next segment. Strange, but very, very true.
Strange but true.
So, I forget who's going to take the lead on this. This is Cynthia,
Yes.
enlighten us of
Oh.
this miracle.
Oh, yes, I would love to. So, this is an article from The Sun, and it's entitled Air. Apparent woman makes bonkers claim she was made pregnant by a gust of wind entering her as cops launch a probe. So, in summary, it was an Indonesian woman who claimed that she actually got pregnant because, like, wind hit her. I was trying to find like a really tasteless joke, but unfortunately I didn't. Sorry, guys.
Well, it's
Wait.
kind of like
Um,
a reverse
Or
balloon knot
fortunately,
then,
Where?
instead of the wind coming out, it goes back in,
it
know?
goes back in. So basically, what ended up happening is that her believe her name is Siti Zaina. Age 25, gave birth to a little girl last week in I want to say is it Tangier, West Java. She basically told the media that she was in her living room, and when she became pregnant from the wind, and within an hour, she gave birth. So basically, she was praying because that's how things happen, and she was lying down on her face because that's what God wants. And then suddenly, a
doesn't want to look
gust
at
of wind actually, entered her vajayjay, and all of a sudden, about 15 minutes later, she experienced some stomach pains, and then she went to the community health clinic and gave birth. And so she was her whole claim was actually investigated by cops. The police officer said one of the things that he
Has she watched
mentioned.
WandaVision recently?
Can we say that on this? I don't know. Can we say
No.
that? Oh, okay. Anywho, uh, so the according to the police chief that actually was working with the clinic, they actually believe that she experienced a cryptic pregnancy, which is a term that's used to describe pregnancy that is not recognized by the mother until she has gone into labor, and it's
Mhm.
also and I think that one of the other reasons why she was made this claim is because one, she was praying, and two, she has been away from her husband for about 4 months now. So I just found it was interesting, child, that I've all of a sudden, like, when and then all of a sudden you just like,
Ah, my stomach.
right.
Mhm.
Oh
Would you
my,
look at that? I'm
oh
knocked up.
my. Right, and
It's
knocked
just
up.
it's just too easy to piece together the missing pieces. Like, okay, but I was away from my husband for 4 months. It takes 9 months to make a baby. Cryptic pregnancy is an actual medical condition. It does exist.
There's a whole
There,
TV show about it.
yes, thank you. There is. Oh my God, I haven't watched that show in a while.
So if
Anyway,
it's
sorry.
on TV, it's scientifically
It's
Thank
real.
factual.
you.
It's real. It's real.
Well, let's not get carried away.
But
Aliens, man.
It's,
it's
I'm not saying it was
all of a sudden,
aliens, but
right. She was honestly, she was in the midst of going through active labor, and it's not until in the very definition of a cryptic pregnancy, yes, during that most of the full term of the pregnancy, you don't recognize that birth, but once it hits that period of going into labor, that's when your body kicks in and
you're going to
out
notice.
pops the baby. So, not to, and it's hilarious. And then it's like, it's not on
It's
so
also
many
very
levels.
sad
It's very sad.
Yeah, yeah.
because we're not talking about a tiny baby or anything. This was a 6.3 pound baby. It was 2.9 kilograms for our more refined people out there that use better units than our American ones. But
Mm.
Oh, you mean
it
We
wasn't a
rest of the
tiny
world?
baby,
We're Americans. We don't use a metric system. America.
I call them freedom units only because I get a rise out of people from outside of America.
I like it.
I love it. Freedom units.
But it made me recall, and I don't know a whole lot, but you hear them in various, based on a true story movies, and uh, you know, interesting late night news of, oh, this woman or person pulled out of becoming really sick, and they, are no longer, like, they're cancer free and stuff, various miracle
No.
claims of being in a bad situation and coming out of it
Unscathed,
miraculously,
yeah.
and the
Yeah.
doctor cannot really medically put a term to what exactly happened. And tidbit, not all medical professionals, doctors, know every single little bitty itty thing about what goes on with your body. We're still learning, we're still researching, we're still developing.
Ben
So
Carson.
when they're Thank why was he head of HUD?
The
Anyway,
pyramids are grain silos,
you that it, we cannot medically define every given situation. Sometimes everyone's body's different. How we work ourselves out of things, just with, how I've gotten information or feedback from people that had their COVID vaccines. Everyone experienced their side effects differently. Not
Yep.
everyone had flu like symptoms. Not everyone, was fatigued or had, fever, chills, and all that.
Yep.
Everybody's
Individual body chemistry.
Indeed.
exactly.
Indeed.
So when you hear about these miracle claims, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to take away from your, quote unquote testimony, to borrow a term, but there are clear explanations to that. And obviously that's a clear explanation to what happened to that woman.
Indeed.
It sounds kind of like Jesus, where Mary's like, "No,
A
I
little
swear
bit.
it was God that did it."
right. I didn't do it. I didn't do I for promise the Lord came to me and told me I was gonna have this baby. And now they're
And
the same
Do
of the world.
you? Or,
I
oh, never
got a
mind.
testimony. That's right.
There you go. There you go.
Insert
That's your
singing
song.
here.
well,
Hmm.
It is.
Yeah, I was just
It
gonna say,
totally
there
is.
it is.
Yeah, there it is.
what the
Are you happy
fascinating
now,
thing?
people?
Yeah, there you go.
Go ahead, X.
Go
The
ahead.
fascinating thing to me about this whole thing is that you didn't hear anywhere in the story that people are taking her at her word with the story. No one's like, this has really happened. It's a miracle. Hosanna, it's a miracle. We need to, nobody's doing that. And even if somebody came forward in this day and age and said, God told me I was going to have a baby. I had a baby and it's the Messiah. Everybody'd be like, come on now. Really? Are you serious about that? But meanwhile, 70% of our country, I think is the number, they are
High.
believing in just that line. Like,
Yes.
if it was something that happened in your book and it happened with your God made flesh on the planet, how could it possibly not happen to these other people? Why are you making fun of the lady that thinks that she spontaneously gave birth after the wind? you
Very
know
fair.
Well,
had some fun, but just
As far as I know, sperm cannot be airborne. So,
hey, I beg to
well,
differ. That's what makes me
well,
sneeze
I was just
every
gonna
year,
say,
Neil.
well,
Those
something about
damn
Mary.
trees,
Something about
and I'm
Mary.
done.
Uh, well, one of the things I did appreciate, to your point, X, about like no
Yeah.
one is just taking her word for it that this all of a sudden happened because wind went whoof. But the officer investigating it was quoted in the article saying that the point is that we want to straighten out the confusing news about the pregnant woman who gave birth in a way that perceived to be unnatural. And he also said that we don't want this matter to foster wild rumors among the public. So I did
Mm.
appreciate that he was trying to take a more, investigative, epistemological. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah,
The
epistemological. Yeah.
epistemological point,
Yeah.
approach when it came to actually investigating this claim
Instead of mocking, right? Yeah.
instead of mocking like we're doing at this particular moment.
I mean, we're being nice about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Mildly.
We're nice
Mildly.
mockers. We're nice
Yeah.
mockers.
But it.
But we would chalk it up to education level. We would chalk it up to
Right.
the possibility of her being in severe trouble for having a child outside of wedlock.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think that West Java that she lives in, I think they're primarily Islamic. I
Yeah,
think
that's a
Hmm.
it's
Muslim
in Indonesia.
area.
So yeah.
Mhm.
So
And you know what? I was thinking about that too. Like I was very concerned because like, with predominantly Islamic rule countries that there is an extra tax, I like to call it, on women as far as like how they're treated and what their position is in said country. And if she happened to all of a sudden give birth, right? Like this, and then she's not with her husband at this particular time, that could have been an improper implication on her, and
yep.
what
Yes.
would have been the consequences of said pregnancy, and you're not with your husband, like that who knows. I didn't do like any type of research as far as
Yeah.
like if there's any like state sanctioned punishment for having a child outside of wedlock, or estrangement from a husband, or even what the implications could be for the woman if that is the case. However, as we all have seen in the past, that extremism in these particular state-run countries where religion is very prevalent, can and definitely does happen. So I was more so concerned about that, but luckily, and maybe we can just chalk it up to this, that the article did not state that that she got into any trouble or anything like that because of it.
Well, it's the Sun. What do we expect?
True.
They're pretty
True.
tabloidy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
one thing that came to my mind just thinking about miracle claims, because of course I run into this question a lot. Just a bit of a segue. I run into this question a lot about how, as well, to anyone that does not know outside of the realm of this, they think I'm a Christian. Um, I met with this question as a nurse. How do you handle situations when a person is terminally ill? How would you care for them, pray for them, things like that? And of course, that's the response that my family would give. And for under my breath, I'd say something other. But it made me think of the harm of how you know, praying, thinking that prayer alone can fix it. And I
Hmm.
know, Cynthia, you might be familiar with this term about laying hands.
Yes,
And how
ma'am.
lay hands,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Happens in Mormonism out here too.
you're
Mhm.
right.
The laying of the
Gather in a
hands.
circle, the person
Yes.
in the middle on their
Yeah,
knees,
Hmm.
lay
well, at a
hands,
summer camp
Lay
we kind of
outstretched.
that's
hands.
totally different. Never mind.
Get the
Yeah.
Earl. Don't forget the
Hmm.
Earl.
Don't
Don't
get the
forget the
Earl.
Earl.
Consecrated
Hmm.
oil. Yep.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes,
And
yes.
you
The people have it on
see,
keychains here in Utah.
you're
Oh
right.
my goodness.
They
And the
carry that shit with them
drama.
everywhere.
Oh my
And a lot of it I've
gosh.
seen in like these televangelist things where they have the dramatic falling over and the preacher or bishop is laying hands on them and then they're just shooken up and all this stuff. And
Heal
a
that
lot of people
pain.
a lot of people believe that stuff, right? I came across this documentary.
Mhm.
It's like 20-minute clip, and I will link this in the description for everyone to view. It is like fascinating. If you ever seen this other documentary about kids doing this Christian Bible study, that's a good one too. But something that came out recently called "The Holy Scam or Miracle: The Faith Health Industry." Predominantly focusing on the assertion of that
Faith
believers, like
health.
preachers and bishops, believing you can heal their congregation or followers from sickness and disease and uproot them from poverty and instill grace and mercy and salvation from their hardships just from prayer alone and them doing nothing else.
Mhm.
That's scary.
It is. I remember looking at a story
Ugh.
some time ago about
I'm
this
sorry, Neil.
woman. I think that the uh, this is like John Oliver talked about this on his show, where a woman was actually diagnosed with cancer, and she was looking at one of those televangelist preachers who said that if you sow a seed or and continuously sow into a good ground, that God will heal you. And that's exactly what she did. And she refused treatment because she just had faith that God was going to heal her. And she ended up giving this preacher thousands of thousands. It was like an insane amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she died.
Oh, this kind of shit makes me so mad.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a
It,
terrible business model for the preacher too, because you need to make sure they're still there to give you more money. You don't.
mm,
It's like loan sharks. Don't kill them.
well,
Keep getting payments.
Yeah.
to be honest, this is that goes kind of into the whole Barnum thing. There's a sucker born
Yep.
every minute. That's kind of like
Hmm.
the idea that actually is you know utilized here, and it's unfortunate that um that like a lot of these particular thought patterns are just very very, very, very prevalent still, that we are, I don't know, just leaning on things that, that we don't have proof that exist or empirical data or anything in that particular realm.
Yeah, I know,
Right.
X, you had a follow-up on the Indonesian
Yeah.
baby, but
The
Neil, I before I get to you on that, I know Neil, for you specifically, because you often have these conversations on a weekly, almost everyday basis with people you interview on your own podcast when you have their host their deconversion stories. Any of
Hmm.
this is any reflection or reminds you of things that you were told that people have shared
Yes,
with you. Yeah.
absolutely. I've spoken with many folks that were part of belief systems that had the faith healing, that had the and here's a great one. It's not religious. Well, I guess you could say it was religiously based. I was dating a Wiccan girl, and this is years ago,
Hey
and
now.
she had a bit of a cancer issue
Mm.
in genitalia part, and she claims that she focused on a tiny point of white light and made it grow, and after doing that, it went away. And she told her doctor the story. And he's like, it probably went into remission. So come back and see me in a few months. And sure enough, he came back, and mind you, it was taken care of, but which is good.
Did he kind of
But
make
yeah.
this noise?
no, but he did kind of.
That's a good doctor.
He kind of give her a look like, what? White healing light? Yeah, it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry.
He put the clipboard half up to his face. What the fuck?
I mean, well, I feel you. I had a patient tell me that, I carry this crystal. One of my
Oh,
patients
well, that'll
came
do you a
through.
lot of good.
Yeah, I carry this crystal around to protect me from, from evil and spirits all around, because, this is an untoward world. And I was like, huh.
Uh-huh.
I mean, was it pointed at least so it could provide some sort of stabbing damage?
Well, kind of, with the
Was
little.
it taking up the space of something because it could actually be protecting her?
Well,
Would it make a
Damn,
good
I
fist
love it.
pack? You know?
well, it was pretty.
It was pretty.
It was pretty.
It could be a necklace.
That's the equivalent of pocket sand in a fight, though. It's
Well,
just...
it was a pretty good size crystal. That was pretty. And it had like
Cool,
little
cool.
stabby thingies, like maybe you can turn
Stabby
it to.
thingy.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's go with that. It could turn
Yeah.
into a weapon. Who
Yeah,
knows?
the
Oh,
Joker
sure.
did it with a pencil. This lady could do it with a crystal. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
good for it.
I mean,
Yeah.
what can you say to that?
Yeah,
I'm not
paperclip. I'll make it work.
yeah. I'm not a person to talk anyone down from their beliefs or what they have as superstition or whatever. I mean, you do you
Depends.
and I do me. That's fine. But I think instilling proper education about things and not just, let go, let God type. No,
Mhm.
I don't condone that. And I, put my foot down on it pretty fiercely. X.
Yeah,
What's
Jesus
up on it?
doesn't take the wheel. He never
No.
does.
Never had.
So follow up on the Indonesia thing, because I wanted a little bit more than what the sun had to offer.
Mhm.
Last year, there was a 28-year-old woman from another city in Indonesia that claimed that she fell pregnant after 1 hour before giving birth. And so there's someone last year that did the same thing. And in 2017, there was another lady in Indonesia that said that she gave birth despite saying she was a virgin, according to local media. So there is something there in that culture that's causing this to happen.
They have
But
some
it
crazy
probably
women
comes
in there.
from this Indonesian child protection chief by the name of Siti Hikmawati, who also caused scandal in February last year when she warned that women could get pregnant swimming in the same pool as males with quote unquote
Right.
strong sperm.
Ooh, child.
Right.
Yeah, because that's a
Right.
thing. Because that is a thing.
Oh, they're fighting to get out as soon as you're in the water.
They're like Kandiru. They just get out.
That is
The opposite direction. My
I'm
bad.
wondering, wow, and all from Indonesia, and it
Yeah.
seems like it's. I'm
Sounds
wondering
like an
what is
education
going
issue.
on.
This needs
Yeah.
to be a case study.
Yes.
I need researchers to head over to Indonesia right now and study this. Like, where in the
right now?
yes,
This would be somebody's good doctoral thesis for why this is a belief, you know?
totally. I mean, like,
They could.
yo, if somebody want to sponsor me, I'll go. I'm just saying,
I'll
because
go with the microphone. So
hell
why are you
yeah.
pregnant?
Oh my gosh. You
Tell
know,
me more.
Swam in a pool.
What
I
has
think
happened?
I think you, Cynthia, made the point of, there being some type of, based on, the religion, there being some type of threat of that person's life, and what would be the charge or what would she be responsible for if her miracle claim was found out to be false or investigated and determined to be false.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if these women are finding themselves in situations where, husband was there, now they're gone, or, possible rape, sexual assault, something to cause these increasing, weird stories to crop up all of a sudden and in recent years and from the same area.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if they're trying to use this as a means of protection from themselves. Like, okay, I got to think of something because we all have done that, right? And trying to think of some type of quick lie to shield us from what was gonna happen. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering if their life is threatened because of these kinds of things.
Well,
Yeah.
keep in mind, Indonesia is still the country that does the caning for people
Mm,
that are found guilty of, having relations outside of marriage, having any kind of gay stuff is just completely non-starter there. Just none of it. So
Mhm.
I said gay stuff, and Neil had a cane in his mouth. What's going on
Yeah,
here, man?
I
that's
don't know.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. Yeah.
Moving
You
on.
said Cain and Neil, obliged you.
Yeah, they're a very draconian country when it comes to doling out punishment, I should say.
Mhm.
So that's probably a good impetus of why these girls are coming up with these stories, because they really don't want to face punishment for it.
Right. And
Even though
especially,
it's completely normal and natural, it's too
well, and to your point, X, it kind of reminded me going back to the article when the woman who made this particular claim about her cryptic pregnancy stated, "I was praying, kneeling on the floor, face down. Then all of a sudden, so basically saying, like, look, I'm still adhering to the statutes of said religion. So don't punish me, please." That's kind of how I took it. Um,
Yeah, good
yeah,
point.
and yeah, and that happens.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I yeah, I agree. You gotta have to really critically think and question what the situation is going on there and what these women are maybe possibly going through. But, it doesn't draw away from the fact that miracle claims can be dangerous and people are very sensitive to them and they need to be watched. But
Mhm.
I want to move us, towards since we're working ourselves towards the end. Let's breathe.
This is
Be more
the
positive. I wanted to
It's
each assign you
the
all to reflect on, women in history. Since, again, March, Women's History Month, it's good to reflect on the
Absolutely.
women that have contributed to not just our own individual countries or where we live, but to the whole world, their contributions to what they have lent to. And I kind of left this final segment to phrase, title it as a positive reflection. So let's go down the line here. Excuse me, X. I apologize. X.
yeah.
You definitely had someone you wanted to give mention to.
Well, I'm a
Mhm.
giant space nerd, and so I grew up venerating a lot of the guys that I saw on the right stuff. The movies that I had as a kid, and it was always being an Air Force kid. You always cared a lot more about the space program than the bombers that were there. So it was always neat to have these people peripherally involved in my life. We would sometimes get superstars coming into the base where you can go and meet them and talk to them, get signatures on stuff. But one of the ones that I really quite enjoyed was Sally Ride, who
Mm.
was the first American woman in space. And that's a very important milestone for, I think, a lot of girls growing up in the country in the 80s, because the representation definitely matters. We all know this. And it's just one of those things where nobody saw that before. But I do want to give a little bit of special deference to the fact that the USSR had their first lady in space in 1963. So it took us 20 years to catch up to Russia, guys. So,
Whoa.
and also, Sally Ride was she's the earliest space traveler to have been recognized as a member of the LGBT community.
That's
So
right. That's right.
very important stuff. She didn't have a huge lasting mark on history like some of you guys, the people that you guys picked out, but she's just somebody I really looked up to as a kid, and I thought she was great. And I don't know, there's not a whole lot more that could be said. She was a hell of a physicist. She was a professor for a number of years. She probably brought more people into STEM than anyone could probably measure. because you get a strong woman that goes to space and spends the rest of her life teaching physics to everybody. It's just that's awesome. I think that's great.
No, thank you for that. I remember growing up, learning about Sally Ride in school. So, it was important to, like you said, seeing that representation and
Yep.
knowing that, even you can, go out to space.
Mhm.
So no, that was great. Thank you. I know Neil, you definitely had someone very
Well,
good as
two
well.
actually, because I
Two,
couldn't
yes,
decide.
both,
Um,
please.
well, I chose the two. I'll do the easy one first. Well, being Canadian and loving hockey, I had to pick Minot Rayon. Minot Rayon was the first woman to ever play in the NHL.
Hmm.
She was a goaltender for, I think, 1 or 2 periods or something for the Tampa Bay Lightning. She's retired now, but she had a lot of other firsts in her career as well. But anyways, I thought that the something a little bit more important than ice hockey, although that's really important to Canadians. So shut up. So anyway, um,
And
and
puck.
another reason,
And
another
puck.
reason I chose, another reason I chose Nellie McClung, who was one of the first women in Canada to fire up the suffragist movement here, to have women recognized as people. She was born on October 20th, just like me. So I was like, wow, I didn't realize that. And I knew who she was,
Wow.
but never realized that, because we have a little thing here in Canada where they call Canadian heritage moments or stories, and they play them in between shows and stuff on like CBC or whatever. So yeah, she was a women's right activist, and she was also a legislator and author who's perhaps known for her involvement in Persons case, which is having women being recognized as being persons. Now, there was a downside to her.
Hmm.
You
Mhm.
know, she was into eugenics, and she was also um, quite racist. Her and her famous five friends that she was involved with, and they
Here's
also,
one side of the coin, and there's the other.
yeah, right. But a lot, it was like that a lot back then, which doesn't make it okay or anything, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So she wanted to introduce eugenics legislation where she would have sterilization of the poor people so that they wouldn't be able to breed and make more poor people and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, with all the good that she did for women's rights and for just basic activism for women here in Canada anyways, there was also a dark side.
Yeah, because being poor is genetic.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
uh,
Well,
kind
it
of
is.
is in this country.
Well, it is
Well,
definitely generational.
Yes.
There you go.
Definitely
There you
generational
Thank
go.
you.
by
There you go.
design. That's
Not
another
genetic,
show, though.
she's
But
trying to
generation.
get rid of.
generational.
She's trying to get rid.
That's the
She
word.
called this all mental defectiveness, alcoholism, prostitution, etc. And she wanted to sterilize people. There was a movement in Alberta where they were trying to get that started, and it never took
Wow.
off, obviously.
Thank
Mhm.
But
goodness.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Alberta's our Texas, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Good to know. I'll
Thank you
mark
for
that.
that context. I
Yeah.
appreciate it because I was just
Thank
like,
you.
well, what's wrong with Alberta?
Now,
My I have
Don't get me
an
started.
ancestor. I have an ancestor named Alberta, like my great grandmother's named
Home
Alberta.
to two of my least favorite
relation.
teams, Oilers and Flames. Never mind. Go ahead.
And we're back to the hockey.
And we're
Back
back.
to the hockey.
There you go.
No home. Woo! All right.
Cynthia,
She also
yours
won
first.
silver medal in the Olympics too. Minot Rayon.
Oh,
Not
Yep.
Okay.
Nelly.
Toronto. Yep.
Go on with your Canada. No, I'm just
very good.
kidding. So the person that I chose to highlight was Phyllis Wheatley.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Mm,
so yeah, and so a bit about Phyllis is that she was born in 1753, roughly. She's originally from Gambia, Africa, and she was captured there by slave traders and brought to America when she was like roughly between 7 to 8 years old in 1761. She was sold to the Wheatley family in Boston, Massachusetts, and her name Phyllis was derived from the ship that brought her to America.
Oh
Oh
man.
wow.
Yeah, I know. I choose like the greatest stories, but it gets a little better. It gets a little better. So she was educated by the Wheatley family. and within 16 months of her arrival, and she could read the Bible. I'm sorry, but she also read Greek and Latin classics and also British literature.
Hmm.
And she also studied astronomy and geography. And at the age of 14, she wrote her first poem, where she began to write poetry. And the family saw that she was extremely talented and took her to London. When she was about 20 years old. And there was a contest that took interest in her poetry and helped her publish her first book of poems. And that's kind of her claim to fame, is that she was the first African American that came from slavery that actually published a book of poems, like, ever.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and and not only was she a poet, but she was also an abolitionist. And one of the things that, and even though that she supported the American Revolution, she was known to say that she believed that slavery was the issue that prevented the colonists from achieving true heroism.
Hmm.
Um, Now, unfortunately, in her story, she was freed in 1773 after she published her first book of poetry. She tried to publish a second one, but never got sponsorship for it. She
Mhm.
married a freedman. From Boston, who she had three children, but none of them survived.
Oh
And
man.
he also had like a problems like with debt, so he ended up going to jail, and she had to become a scullery maid. And for her and her last child that she tried to have that didn't survive, she died in childbirth. Um,
Mhm.
Now, her story, though, does inspire um, more organization in the early 20th century during the Great Migration, which were called settlement homes. I believe that Jane Addams had one, and basically
Right.
these particular homes were um, places that women can come in order for them to be able, whether they're single or they have children, where they can get like housing and healthcare and vocational guidance and even religious education. I know it's sad, but still they did. And one of the houses that is was named after Phyllis Wheatley was open by an Lindsay Davis in 1908. And that particular house is still standing to this day in Chicago. Currently, it is set to be demolished, and there are organizers that are trying to come together to get the city to save it and declare it as a historical
Heritage.
landmark.
Oh,
Great.
Yeah.
please.
So, and I believe that they did make a settlement, and there was a petition going around. I need to follow up on that story more, but they are definitely trying to save it because it is a staple and it's a heritage to history, and especially when it comes to providing a place uh, in during that particular time period where Negro women, colored women, African
Mm-hmm.
American women were not allowed to stay at like the YWCA's because of
Right.
race. So
Right.
it's
Segregation.
an
Yeah.
important part of history that needs to be preserved. So that's
I
my
I hope.
person.
Yes, I hope there are great strides. I know there are great strides in trying to establish and protect that as a historical monument, and is just, just like everything else that we have, that
Mhm.
definitely needs to be reserved. And I really, really hope that that does follow through. Um, one
Just
of
just
mine.
it just
Oh,
makes me feel like, what have I done with my life? She lived all that in 31 years, and I'm 41 now. It's like, come on.
Ciao.
the things you can do
I'm
in
gonna go
young
hang my
life
head in
is,
shame.
yeah,
Uh,
the things you can do in young life, it demonstrates, so much, and how much you can change the world today. And with my person, she died at that early age of 31 as well.
wow.
Henrietta Lacks. Not a lot of people
Mm.
have known of her. Even I didn't know of her until I started getting myself into the medical profession. Something a little bit regarding her background is, one early winter, I would say February of 1951. She was diagnosed with this aggressive form of cervical cancer. And so, for hundreds of years prior to that, scientists, researchers, cell biologists were trying to study and grow cells outside of the human host. But, only for unlimited amounts of time would they survive outside, maybe a couple days at best. And nothing longer than that. So, continuing research could not be established and how cells, form and studies on viruses, bacteria, and things like that. But with what was going on with the cancer cells of Henrietta was that, you know, without her consent and without her own knowledge, her doctor, and this was at the John Hopkins Research Hospital in Baltimore, where there was pretty much the only location where they had wards specifically for African American and poor demographics, where they would treat. And so he removed a portion of her cells, took it to this researcher by the name of Gregory Guy. He studied them and noticed that her cancer cells kept multiplying, dividing, growing outside of her body, and it lasted for days. Still to this day, we don't understand and fully know how unique and why this how her cancer cells have grown and lasted outside her body for this long. Till this day they still exist. But for decades, Guy had traded and shared the cells with other researchers across the globe. For years, the family didn't know. Unfortunately for Henrietta, she died from any type of treatment that same year, from her cervical cancer, not knowing the contribution that she made for the rest of the world, and establishing research help for polio vaccine, establishing research help to figure out how long cells can last outside of the Earth's atmosphere, because just like Sally Ride, her cells went to space too. And for generations there has been this disparity and discrimination, or this disparity of how African Americans have been treated in regards to medical health care. Tuskegee experiment is classic for that, and establishing informed consent was not known back then.
Right.
But fortunately, with her cells, they're no longer being shared without the ask or without the um, grant of the family. So they now, in conjunction with the National Institute of Health, sit on a board of and a committee to say, okay, you can't use our grandmother's cells unless you ask us first. And that is just the phenomenal. That's been unheard of. And to bring it even more home, since going with this in part of this pandemic, they were the first to help assist with, helping with establishing the COVID vaccines. They utilized Henrietta Lacks' cells to help establish research and move forward with developing the COVID-19 vaccines that we have now.
Amazing.
And that's tremendous. And it just
It's
shows the
huge.
importance, major importance of how, you know, um, y- uh, gaining from off the backs of Black people, how much that contribution has not only helped America, but the whole world for us
Mhm.
now is major. And I
It's
definitely,
huge.
definitely wanted to give her that voice.
I tip my bandana.
Thank you.
I
Progressive
thank her for my
bandana.
sore arm right now.
No,
Yes, Henrietta Lacks is
Good,
still
good
saving
Sora.
lives,
yes.
saving lives to this day. Thank you
To
for
this
Yeah,
sharing
day,
that.
you
Yeah.
can rightfully
that's
say
beautiful. Yeah,
she's still living, unlike
yeah,
Tupac, who's
yeah.
just a hologram.
R.I.P. Tupac, R.I.P. Biggie.
But I digress. But that
Biggie
brings
was
us to,
awesome.
yes, that brings us to our end though. That, oh my gosh, that brings us to our end. That was fast. I
It
appreciate having you
was.
all. Yeah, I appreciate having you all here. This was a great discussion. I am so glad we,
Good time.
went a little bit more international with our
Yeah,
research and our talk about various things. But
I
you
could
know,
partake in this one.
yes,
I don't pay much attention to U.S. and politics down there,
yes, it's not always about America. There's other
America.
shit going on elsewhere. and that has to be heard too. But there's also people that we can recognize, especially in our month of recognizing women in our history, that needs that of effort.
Yeah,
So I want to thank
absolutely.
you, X, for coming back with us,
Thank you
Neil,
for having me.
Cynthia, for being here with me, and to all of you watching us here on our Sunday show. Please, if you have any comments, if you want to continue this conversation with us, please go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel and send us an email at the nonprofits at atheist-community.org. You can find us on the Discord as well, tiny.cc/ACA Discord, and our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/the nonprofits live. To all
Yeah.
of you, please contribute to our Patreon if you can at patreon.com/nonprofits. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.